Well, how you doing today? Hopefully good. I know it's a rare thing to see me in a shirt and tie, but how am I looking? All right. Dapper. Um, okay, what do I want to talk about today? If you don't know who I am, John Solano, 33 years as a counselor. Maybe the direction I'm going to speak to this from today is from a vocational employment career counseling direction. I spent a lot of years doing that, but my focus has always been on helping those people who had a history of trauma. And we all know, especially now with the ACEs research, things like that, we've known it for a long time, but it's not up for debate that when people experience a hard life trauma, that it does become a significant barrier to employability. So I was kind of re-inspired to speak about this because a couple of days ago I listened to a state of Washington YouTube video in which they were discussing some new monies that had come into the field to support families that were experiencing poverty. Not that there wasn't already funds available, but this extra funds, I guess, is to help those even more recognizably in poverty. One of the things that we know, if we've been in the field a long time, and you certainly know this as you've been a counselor, is that there's a strong connection between trauma and a person's lack of ability to successfully engage the labor market. That's not up for debate. I mean, trauma has a lot of different faces and a lot of different manifestations. It doesn't mean that people who engage the labor market haven't experienced trauma in their life, because people deal with it differently. That being the case, if somebody, for the most part, hasn't already engaged the labor market successfully, either on their own or through some of the traditional supports, it's very likely that something else is going on, and trauma is probably something that's gone on. I've been a counselor for 33 years, and I have a significant, expertise in the area of trauma. As I mentioned, my early role was as a vocational and employment counselor working with traumatized individuals. So very familiar with this terrain and very familiar with how trauma can set up a number of barriers to employability and to engaging and remaining attached to the labor market. So here I am, I'm listening to this YouTube video, and it just, again, reminds me of so many conversations that I've been a part of over the last several decades. Several of the attendees of the workshop were managers of various employment centers, and they were talking about and sharing with the representatives from the state, that they're seeing more and more people who have co-occurring disorders in their programs, right? And really what they're suggesting is that you can't just throw money at this, or you got to throw it in a way that's fairly specific, and that is really to address the trauma, because without addressing the trauma, people are just going to have a difficult time engaging the labor market. Now, I've done a number of YouTube videos already on this, and I've spoken at conferences and trained a lot of people in this already, but to make it very simple is one of the things people in the employment services and employment counselors need to understand is this dynamic of inflated entitlement and indulgence and its connection to trauma. So when you get a close-up picture of what we human beings call trauma, one of the, I guess you could say, predictable traditional responses to trauma is an inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence. I would love to explain this more, but the issue is that if that dynamic is not addressed, then progress is very slow. And this is something that I have been successful in implementing in a number of different programs. But one most notably is the award-winning program called the Baristas program that I supervised and implemented this integrity approach that I will talk about in a moment within that program, and getting international recognition, won the highest award in the province of British Columbia, the Award of Excellence and got so many other recognitions. And we were working with traumatized youth who were engaging Starbucks. And so we accomplished great things in that program, utilizing what I call kind of a trauma-informed but empowerment-focused model known as the integrity model, or the integrity approach. And so I wanted to talk about what it meant to set up a program that was a program of integrity. You know, integrity in a program is so important, because if you want certain outcomes, you have to make sure that the program itself and your practices are sufficient, if you will, are designed to obtain the outcome. And a lot of times what happens is that at the front end of a program, recruitment is occurring. And for instance, if you're recruiting people who are experiencing poverty, and you design a program full of incentives, if you will, you know, housing incentives and food incentives, all that kind of stuff is good stuff. But if you don't address the trauma, then all these incentives really are just kind of going to fall by the wayside. They're not really going to help you achieve your ultimate outcomes, which is to help people achieve self-sufficiency, hopefully within the shortest period of time you can possibly manage. My promise when I was doing this work was that I was, you know, my promise deeply is to help people, you know, of all walks of life kind of deal with needless suffering. It's like, and to do this in the shortest amount of time possible, with the fewest bells and whistles, you know, and that has always been the case. And that's what funders want to hear. It's like, you know, we're going to give you $7.5 million and we want to see a particular outcome. Now, of course, if you're a program, you want to do that too. You want to achieve your results in the shortest periods of time, because of course it puts you at the top of the stack for refunding, right? It makes you look good, right? And you're helping people, you're helping people. But how do you do that when you're serving a population that has a history of trauma? But if you create a program that's completely aimed at what we might call traditional supports and policy to move people towards employability, that's probably not going to produce for you, right? So in other words, you know, teaching people basic life skills about time management and budget management, teaching people about resume construction and transferable skills, and, you know, leading people through seminars around post-secondary planning and career education and career planning. That's all good, but that's also all very cognitive and behavioral. And one of the cases that I've made over the years is that it's like shooting a BB gun at an elephant. It just isn't going to work. Why is that not going to work? Because trauma is preoccupying. I'm not going to unpackage that significantly right now because I have in other videos. But if you've experienced trauma yourself, or you know people who are traumatized, you'll know that their mind is preoccupied because of the healing that has yet to occur because of the trauma. When trauma occurs, it causes somebody to be preoccupied with that trauma because they don't want to be hurt again. And so that can look like anxiety, depression, or it can look like adopting coping mechanisms that are counterproductive to successfully engaging the labor market. In order to engage the labor market, a person has to feel confident and, you know, present well and show up on time and feel well, you know, physically and mentally. And those are all challenging things when somebody has healing to do, right? And so that needs to be addressed within a program that has integrity. Integrity is about designing a program that is in alignment with your client population. So if you've got a client population that has a history of trauma, then you want to design a program. And this isn't just about being trauma informed and making sure the paint on the walls is the right color and everybody's greeted, you know, in a friendly manner and, you know, things of this nature. No, I mean, that's important, but it's got to take trauma informed to the next level. You know, it has to be a trauma practice. That gets tricky in employment programs because most employment counselors, at least in my experience, go through a formal training program, about how to be career practitioners, and there's little or no information about dealing with a traumatized population. Even if there was a little bit of programming in it, you really have to have a significant background in psychology and trauma and human development, and attachment theory and all these things to really be effective when it comes to seeing deeper into how you design a program that has integrity with that client population. And so this is really what needs to happen. And so I'm listening to this meeting here, and I'm going, okay, well, X million amount of dollars aimed at helping a population that's experiencing poverty, knowing that this population is probably experienced significant trauma. And that's not really something that probably the state representatives know about. In fact, it's great that the money, has been legislatively, made available, but somewhere there needs to be some significant training in how this is going to actually trickle down into a program model that has integrity with that client population. And so there is a way to do that. There is a way to do that. I've done it, as I said, in our program won, highest awards in the province of British Columbia and got international recognition. And I would love to come and share with your staff in your employment center some of the key dynamics around how to recognize trauma when it's there and how to help people work through that without having to be a therapist. It is possible. And if you're a manager of such a program, I know you want your staff to be trauma informed and trauma aware and give them some better education and tools, in fact, to help their clients move through and be effective and attach and maintain attachment to the labor market is going to be the key. And to do that within the windows that you have to work in. So let me be of service. Let me be of service to you. Let me share with you some of the information that I've come up with, and I would be happy to share with you this thing that I call the integrity model. Again, it's trauma informed, empowerment focused. All right, and I've been doing this for a lot of years, and so you're going to hear stuff that you've never heard before, and I'm going to give you some sneak kind of peeks, some deep peeks into some psychological dynamics that you've likely never heard before, but you really need to be aware of, because they will be major barriers to the folks going through the program and to the staff as they're trying to work and assist people through, and also to, as I said, to help folks sustain employment. So yeah, give me a shout, get a hold of me. I'd be happy to come and share information with you. Zoom is making everything possible, and so we can set up a quick Zoom meeting with your staff. I'd be happy to share some dynamics. I'd also be happy to, if you happen to be in the Pacific Northwest between the Canadian border and, in the Seattle area, Everett, Seattle, or, more into the interior, I'd be happy to come for a drive and spend a couple hours with your team. All right, so yeah, leave me a comment and I'll be happy to be of service. Take care.